There was a certain man who used to go around talking about parenting. He was quite an authority because he had no children. So his main lecture used to be titled 10 Commandments for Parents. And then he got one child. And he modified the topic of the lecture and he called it 10 Rules for Parents. Then he got a second child. And he modified the topic even further, and he called it 10 Suggestions for Parents. Well, we have 4 children. We have 4 children. So we're just going to give you some hints. But the truth is, this has been a 40-year study for us, because we have 4 children ranging from age 40 at the top end to age 26 at the bottom end. And we are now the proud grandparents of 7 lovely grandchildren. And I tell you something, we wish we had the grandchildren first. Because now that we have become authorities in parenting, we don't have the children anymore, we have the grandchildren, you know. So we plan to write the book titled 101 Things We Wish We Knew Before We Became Parents. But we are glad that because of our 40-year journey, we have somewhat to share with people who are going through the journey.
You know, the other day I heard a friend of mine said to me, "I'm so glad I'm not a child this time. I would hate to be a child growing up in these times." And so sometimes we wonder, who has the dilemma? Is it the child or is it the parent? You know, Mrs. Brown had invited a large number of guests to dinner one evening. And she had a bright little girl, a little 4-year-old. And she said, "Okay, we're about to eat. Marianne, would you please ask the blessing on the meal?" And the little girl said, "Oh, I don't know what to say. I'm so afraid. I don't want to say the grace." And Mom said, "Oh, don't worry. Don't be afraid. Just say what you've heard me say when we've had guests." So the little girl began. "Dear Lord, why in the world did I invite all these people to dinner?"
You know, Art Linkletter used to have a program, Kids say the strangest things. And I tell you, we are learning so much from our grandchildren now. And we must have done something right somewhere along the way, because the children seem to like to send the grandchildren with us. Maybe it's not just a getaway, so maybe they figure that at least there was something they learned from us that we could transmit to the grandchildren. So here we go. We're talking this morning about strong Christian home and marriage, the foundation for effective parenting.
Now, when we think of families, we like to think of happy families. No, nobody goes into the idea of having a family thinking, "Oh, I'm going to have a dreary family. It's going to be drab. It's going to be sad. It's going to be unfortunate." We like to think of happy families.
But you know, it's important for us to understand, and we really want to applaud the university and the union who collaborated with them for hosting this program, because many people don't seem to understand the impact that the home has on the parenting and the future of the children. When the home and marriage are strong, the children are much more likely to become well-adjusted and well-behaved children. You could buy that? Well, Jesus gave us what we call the law of the harvest.
Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. Hence the importance of working with our parents so that they will not be corrupt trees bringing forth corrupt fruit.
You know, some researchers have gone to the trouble to trace the family tree of outstanding citizens and compared the result of the family tree of people who became people like serial killers. And it's amazing to see that as a general rule, what Jesus said is true, that good trees bring forth good fruit and bad trees or corrupt trees, as Jesus says, bring forth evil fruit.
So what makes a strong marriage and family? Now, many researchers like Nick Stinnett and John Dufresne studied thousands of couples and identified the top factors for strong and successful marriages and families. It's interesting that no matter who the researchers were, there are some common characteristics of strong families or strong marriages.
So let's look at some of these, and we're going to race you through a little so that we could help to redeem the time here. When we talk about the strong families, from the research that numerous people have looked at, they discover that there are certain common things that run in these families that we could consider strong, happy, vibrant families. And one of them is commitment to marriage and family. Strong families believe in family. And the husband and wife, when they get married, are saying to each other, we're in it for the long haul. They're not going to have a Hollywood marriage. You know what they say a Hollywood marriage is? The vow that they take when you get married in Hollywood? For richer, for poorer, but not for long. But in the strong families, they were in it with the old-fashioned vow, for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part. So there are still people around who take that kind of vow and take it seriously.
But then, unfortunately, there's some things that are creeping in to erode the commitment thing. Yes, we're talking about the importance of commitment to family. Commitment to family as one of the characteristics of strong marriages and family.
They tell us across the United States, and this is probably typical of most of the world. Wherever you go in the world, you're going to find the statistics varying maybe about 10%. Some a little better, some a little worse. But in the United States, where we now live, about 50% of the marriages they claim will end up divorce. So more than half of the children who are now under 18 will live with only one parent by the time they're 18. And that is sad. That's not what God wanted. That's not what God intended. When God designed marriage and the family, it was with the idea that children would have a mother and a father helping them to grow up to be the kind of people that they ought to be.
But then divorce, the idea of divorce has crept in. And it's becoming more and more popular. And let's look at some reasons why divorce is so common. One, it's so easy. Divorce is easy to come by. The other day we saw an advertisement of an attorney of a law firm. They said, let's help you get to divorce without any trouble. You know, easy divorces. Attorneys are offering attractive offers.
Then, of course, there's a relaxed attitude to society. Divorce doesn't carry a stigma anymore. In fact, once upon a time when we met old friends, after we hadn't seen them for a while, we used to ask them, how's your wife? How is your husband? We don't do that anymore. Because we've been embarrassed too many times. We go up to some people that we know would have stayed together for life, and we ask, how is your wife? And they say, don't you know that we are divorced now? So that seemed to be the more typical answer now when you ask, how is your wife? So we usually now try to dance around it to find out what's going on.
We say, how's your family? That's safe. That's safe. You know, we're talking about the relaxed attitude of society to divorce. And you may have seen or heard of the series Happily Divorced, the TV series. It's a TV series based on the real life of Fran Drescher, a comedian, an actor, and a producer. And she discovered after 18 years of marriage that her husband was gay, and so she divorced him. But the series is based on the wonderful time she's having, a lot of dating experiences and challenges, and they still live under the same roof. So that is supposed to be acceptable and shows that one could be happily divorced.
Then, of course, the near silence of the church. You know, lots of us pastors are afraid to touch the subject. So you will seldom hear a sermon from the pulpit encouraging the members to stay together and run away from divorce. You know, it's a little touchy subject now, so you don't hear too much about it in the church.
And then there's the media influence. And then liberal counselors who are not stressing commitment, but they're stressing convenience and trends.
But we are emphasizing that the strong home, the strong, vibrant home, the strong marriage is more likely to produce the kind of children we want. And maybe that's why Jesus had said, what God has joined, let man not separate. Because children of divorce generally do not fare as well as those coming from intact homes. Judith Wallerstein has written a massive book on the unexpected legacy of divorce, where she looked at some children on a longitudinal study to see what effect. Because, of course, when she started out, she was trying to see if does it make any difference. And she was amazed, and that's why she calls the book The Unexpected Legacy. The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. Because to her surprise, there were so many negatives associated with divorce on the children. The children who come out of these broken homes are less likely to fare as well as those who come from the intact homes.
One of the best legacies parents can give to their children is the example of a committed relationship. And I'd like us to ponder on this quotation from Adventist Home, page 19. Perhaps we can read it together. The family relationship should be sanctifying in its influence. Christian homes, established and conducted in accordance with God's plan, are a wonderful help in forming Christian character.
So there you have it. If you said nothing else, Ellen White is saying what we are saying, that the Christian homes, established and conducted according to God's plan, are a wonderful help in forming the Christian character of the children she's talking about. What else do strong marriages bring to the table then in helping us with effective parenting?
The first characters we talked about was commitment. Now we're talking about love, appreciation, and affection. In the text, Proverbs 31, 28 to 29, we see that the wise man says that the children and the husband affirm the mom or affirm the wife. And one of the things that causes families to be happy and thrive well is love, appreciation, and affection. Remember Dr. Davidson's balloon. Love, affection, affirmation, and appreciation. Kay Kuzma talks about the love cup. The love cup that everyone has, she said. And in this love cup, we pour affirmation, affection, appreciation, and that keeps the cup full. But every love cup has a hole at the bottom. And all those things that we pour in leak out in the night when we go to bed. So the next day we get up, we have an empty cup. We've got to fill it again. And they say that when someone's love cup is empty, then of course he's grumpy and grouchy and not very nice to be near.
So we want to emphasize, as Dr. Davidson mentioned it too, that where children feel loved, they are going to gravitate in that direction. So if they feel loved in the gang, they're going to move to the gang.
And that is
so
the
that is why
gangs.
The home then should really buttress them with a lot of love, appreciation, and affection. And if they feel more loved and appreciated at home, they will less likely be tempted to go with the gangs and be influenced by their peers.
So when was the last time you told your child how much you loved or appreciated or cared about him or her? Love is the great motive force in human beings. Those who feel loved will go to great lengths to please those from whom they perceive love. Lack of feeling love makes us hard, resentful, callous, and cold. I'm sure you have been reading in the news about many cases where people have gone to schools and opened fire, and ex-workers have gone to the workplace and shot up and tried to kill previous colleagues and so forth. And they say that many of these people had experienced rejection, lack of love, bullying, and they grew cold and callous.
Here's another quotation from Ellen White. Adventist Home, pages 18 and 19. She says every home should be a place of love. She was making good sense here. Every place should be a place of love, a place where angels of God abide. The home that is beautified by love, sympathy and tenderness is a place that angels love to visit and where God is glorified.
We have a little activity, very, very short, because we don't have much time. But think and then share with the person at your table two things. Two things of appreciation and love and acceptance. Just two things that you would share with your child the next time you meet him or her. Just two things you'd like to share. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So now you have an assignment to carry out. We're talking about the things that make a marriage and a home and a family strong. And now we move to positive communication.
And this is another thing that has a definite impact on the parenting of the children. When children are properly communicated with, they want to share with their parents and parents can share with them. And maybe that's why the Bible over in Deuteronomy, Moses told the children of Israel that you have to learn how to talk with your children when you're walking, by the way, when you're sitting down, when you're standing up, when you're rising up, and so on. In other words, make communication, good communication, a part of your everyday living with your children.
You know, I saw an incident the other day. It broke my heart. But then what helped to repair my confidence in parents was another incident that followed it a few months after. Let me share the negative one first. I was in the bank, and there was a parent and a child, about a 3-year-old. And he kept pulling at his mom. He said, Mommy, 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 so. He was obviously trying to get her attention to tell her something. So he started tugging at her, Mommy, Mommy, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know. And then she just stood there very stoically and totally ignored the kid. And he kept saying, Mommy, and trying to get the attention. And she acted as if there was nothing there, you know. There was a wall standing beside her, and I really, really felt so hurt, you know. And I just felt I had to say something to the kids. I turned to the child and I said, hello, how old are you? And he said, oh, I am this, I'm 3. You know, he obviously wanted somebody to talk to. And I said, oh dear, if this is what happens in the bank in public, can you imagine what happens at home? This child is ignored a lot. But I was in the store the other day, and there was a father and a little boy. And apparently, from what I picked up, the little boy wanted a certain shirt, but there wasn't his size for the shirt. And this is what I heard the father say. Well, I know you really like this shirt, and you'd really like to wear it to the party. I like it too, but you know, they don't have your size. You know what we're going to do? Why don't we go back to the rack and see if we could find something else that you might like? You know, and that made me feel good. It restored my faith in parenting. So we've got to be careful. Our children deserve the respect and the reciprocation and the consideration in terms of communication.
So the success and happiness of a marriage and family will rise or fall on the ability to communicate effectively, which is a subject in itself. But we want to emphasize here that wholesome values can be better transmitted if there is good rapport between parent and child. When the parents and children communicate regularly and they talk a lot together, you can better transmit the values to them in such a situation.
And of course, God knew that we would be living in a time-starved society, and we would be so time-deprived that he said, look, you've got to grab all those teachable moments. Don't say, okay, I'm going to wait until Tuesday night to sit down and impart values. Grab it every moment. You see somebody on drugs and you see the behavior, refer to them and point out to them. You see a teen mother, say, you know, stress purity. Every chance you get, we have got to grab those teachable moments.
John Gottman, one of the most celebrated counselors on marriage and family and that sort of stuff, has written some excellent stuff in several of his books. He has several books. And wherever you see that name Gottman, you get hold of the book because he has lots of good stuff to say. And in talking about communication, by the way, he has a lab, like a family lab. When people come for counseling, he puts the couple inside this lab, and they don't realize they're being observed. And he sees how they interact with each other. And he claims that just by watching how they relate to each other, how they communicate with each other, he can predict with 90% accuracy if the marriage will succeed or fail. And one of the points he makes in one of the books is that there are three styles. There is the leaning to, the leaning away from, and the leaning against. Let's illustrate.
So, today was rough.
Was it really?
Yes, I didn't get through my lesson plans, and this is the day that the principal wanted to see everybody's lesson plans.
Oh man, that must have bothered you a lot.
It did, because I am very careful about that, and I didn't want the principal feeling that I was becoming careless.
Okay, so leading to, you're being engaged in what the person has to say. The person is talking, you look at the person, and you're involved. And he calls that leaning to. You're engaged in what the person has to say.
So now, we do that when our children come on the scene and we want to communicate with them.
And I learned a valuable lesson since my boy, now, we have 4 children. Did I tell you about we have 4 children? Right. We still have the same 4 children that we started with. We have three of them are girls, 1 is a boy. When the boy was about 6 years old, my wife overheard him by himself, amusing himself, and he was going like this. Okay. So she said, Jansen, his name is Jansen too, you see. She said, Jansen, what's going on? What are you doing? He said, I'm playing daddy. She says, what do you mean you're playing daddy? He says, that's how daddy responds to me when he's not listening to me.
And he was only 6. So our children pick up certain things. They know when we're not focused.
So I wasn't leaning to. So we go now to the leaning away from, which is a bad style. The leaning to is what you want to do. Be engaged in what the other person is saying to you. If for some reason the child comes at a time and you really can't talk to the child at that moment, instead of not communicating with the child, then what you do is to say, look, in my case, Jansen, look, Jansen, I really want to listen to what you have to say. Whatever you have to say to me is important to me, but right now I'm trying to finish this up. You think you could give me about 20 minutes for me to finish it up, and then we could sit down and talk? Do something like that, rather than to pretend to be listening and not really listening. So leaning to is being engaged in what the child or the parent or the other person has to say. Then leaning away from.
You know, today was a rough day at school. Today was a rough day at school.
Yeah, I wonder what I did with
I was telling you about my day at school, Jansen.
Yes, I understand.
Today was a rough day at school. You see the principal?
But I'm trying to find this thing. Yes, I'm listening, but I'm trying to find...
Don't bother.
I'm trying to find this thing that I put down here. I don't know who kept moving my stuff around.
I'm trying to tell you what happened at school today.
That's the, as Trotman says, that's the leaning away from. I'm not being hostile, but what she's saying to me is of less importance than what is engaging me at the moment. You follow? So it's not that I'm hostile to what she's saying, but I don't have the time. I'm engaged in something else. Something else is occupying me. Okay, the leaning against. We're giving you the short version of these. The leaning against.
Today was such a good day at school. You know,
I have to go out. So maybe we could talk another time. So with the leaning against, you don't even want to listen to the person. You don't want to be bothered by what the person has to say. So what we're saying that in communicating with your children, if you want them to keep talking with you, you have to learn to be engaged with them. Be engaged with them in what they have to say. What they have to say to your adult mind may not always seem to be important to you, but you have to do what you can so that you could.
Okay, so we're continuing with John Gottman and his contribution to communication.
And he says a little more, and maybe this one will intrigue you as Bible people. He did extensive research on the couples and what makes relationships work or make them fail. And he talks about 4 deadly horsemen. You know, over in the book of Revelation, you read about these horsemen, these deadly horsemen that run rampaging through the world and so on. Gottman took his spin off of that. And he says, in relationships, they are often present, these deadly horsemen, and you have to watch them with care. In one of his books is titled, Why Marriages Succeed or Fail. And he talks about them there.
And Goffman observes that these 4 horsemen are lethal to marriage and family relationships.
And you should keep them out of your relationships, keep them out of your family, keep them out of your interaction with one another, whether it's husband and wife or parent and children.
And they clip-clop into the relationship in that order: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling.
So the first one is criticism, and maybe this is the least deadly of the horsemen. Criticism. Sometimes something might be wrong, sometimes something might be wrong, and we have to learn the difference between a complaint and a criticism. Suppose I feel that my wife isn't cooking good enough food. She's an excellent cook. That's why I could use that as an illustration. I call her Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is the cooking guru on television. So that's to tell you she's a good cook. But so that's why I could use this illustration. But suppose she wasn't doing too well in the kitchen department and it was bothering me. If I'm criticizing, I would come across like this. I don't know what kind of food you're cooking. You ever learned to cook at home? What kind of food you're giving me day after day? Eh? You probably want to kill me. You know I have high blood pressure and you're giving me the salt food.
You see, the criticism attacks me. It's different from a complaint.
The complaint then would say, girl, I really like your food and I'm so glad that I have you doing this cooking for me. But you know, sometimes I have to go a little cautiously because the salt in that last meal was a little more than I could handle. You think we could do something about that?
So you see the difference between the criticism and the complaint. The complaint is normal. You're stating something that happens, but the criticism is crude and bitter and you attack the person.
Now, with the criticism, she would probably want to say, well, don't cook your food yourself. With the complaint, she would say, well, honey, I didn't realize it was that salt, but I'm going to watch the salt the next time. You understand? So we have to learn the difference between making a complaint where you don't attack the person, but you state the problem, as opposed to the criticism where it's an attack on the person.
And then the next horseman is contempt. Now this contempt grows out of the criticism. It's bitter and it is disgusting. It communicates disgust and even disrespect, contempt. So that is the worst of the horsemen.
Yeah, it's a terrible one, because even the look on the person's face, as you're talking with the person, the look on your face could convey contempt even without the words. But the contempt, with the contempt, you're putting down the person. I don't know what kind of wife you are. Why did I marry you in the first place? With all the women I saw on that college campus, why on earth did I marry you?
And look at you. And you know, you see the person's face, you know, a look of scorn. And then the next horse...
And by the time you reach contempt, you're in serious trouble. You better run to the marriage therapist quickly.
Then there's defensiveness. And this comes about because maybe we wanted to transfer blame onto the person. I'm like this because you are like that. Because when we are criticized or when we are the victims of contempt, we feel that the way to protect ourselves, the way to survive, is to go on the defensive.
And of course, stonewalling, we don't even want to discuss. You don't even want to talk about the problem.
And men are famous for that. You know, they tune out. Men are masters. Many men are masters at tuning out.
Yeah, men are more likely to engage in stonewalling than women. But you know, what we've discovered over the years is that the Bible has all these principles, and all the researchers had to do is to find what the Bible says and then go and work at it. Hear what the Apostle Paul says in Ephesians 4 and verse 29. Let's say it together.
Do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to the needs, that it may benefit those who
If in our homes we did nothing else but practice this principle in our communication, what beautiful homes we would have.
And this reminds me of a poem I learned years ago, a long, long time ago. It's about words and it's about communication. And it goes like this: boys flying kites, all in their white-winged birds. You can't do that way when you're flying words. Careful with fire is good advice, we know. Careful with words is 10 times doubly so. Thoughts unexpressed may sometimes fall back dead, but God himself can't kill them once they're said.
We are talking about how you could have the strong family that will produce effective parenting, how you could have the positive effect on the children. And another one is time together. Dr. Davidson also mentioned this, time together. The Parrows, Les and Leslie Parrow, have written a book called The Time-Starved Marriage. And lots of people are zeroing in on it, that lots of marriages are dying not because of big mountainous volcanic problems, but they don't spend enough time together. We live in an area now, we're retired by the way, we retired and we went to live in Texas because 2 of our children and the grandchildren are living there, and we went to have fun with the grandchildren. But the area is a military area. The largest US base is in that area, Fort Hood. At any given time you have about 15,000 soldiers on that base. Consequently, our own Adventist churches have a predominance of military people. And sometimes in talking, and we do workshops for the military people too, and sometimes in the workshops we realize why military families break up with such an alarming rate. One couple we were talking with the other day, the husband, he's a chaplain in the military. Right now he's deployed in Afghanistan. He'd been to Iraq before, came back for a little while, and now they send him to Afghanistan. And the wife says that they have been married now for 3 years. They've been married now for 3 years, and in the 3 years, they have only spent about 6 months together. That marriage is time-starved. You can't build a relationship if you don't spend time together. Now, you may happen to be in the same place. Being in the same house at the same time does not qualify as time together. You agree with me? Unless you're interacting and sharing with each other, then it's not time together. The same thing then is true with parent and children. Simply because the children are in the house and you're in the house, the children are doing their thing, you're doing their thing. Don't say that you're spending time with the children. You're only spending time with the children when you get down at their level and you're interacting with them at their level, then you are really spending time with the children.
Sometimes we talk about quality time and quantity time. Which you think is more important? Those of you who think quality time is more important, raise your hands, please. Okay, thank you, down. Those of you who think quantity time is more important, let's see your hands. So practically everybody here gives the passing grade to quality time, is that it?
My wife's birthday is July 1. She had the misfortune of not being born in the beautiful month of April. So she is born July 1. Now, if I say to her, you know, sweetheart, July 1 is your birthday, I'm going to spend the entire day pampering you. Whatever you want, you just wish it, and that will be my command. I'll just spend the whole of July 1 with you. But the other 365, well, this year has 366 actually. The other 365 days of the year, you don't bother me about anything. I've given her quality time, haven't I? But is there a problem? What's the problem? No, it's not superficial. I'm giving her real quality time. I'm going to pamper her. I'm going to put lotion on her feet and so on. I'm going to massage her back and so on. I'm going to take her to the shopping center, give her a blank check and say, look, whatever you want to think. But I'm giving her real quality time, but that one day a year. Is there a problem? What's the problem? So you don't just need quality time, it needs to have some quantity with it.
You know, some time ago, CNN ran a documentary on what they call barrel kids. You know, kids who stay with their grandparents or some relatives in the islands. and their parents go to the mainland, go to the UK, go to the US or someplace and work. But they don't neglect their children because they're working to build a future for the kids, and they send back barrels of clothes. They say that these barrel kids are usually well-dressed. They've got all the toys they need. I mean, they are really well taken care of materially. And they call them barrel kids. But they also pointed out that not all of these kids felt that they were totally satisfied. And you know, this brings us to the other point. Our children are more in need of our presence, P-R-E-S-E-N-C-E, than our presents, P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S, our gifts. And sometimes we think, oh, I'll give you this, I buy you this, I do this with you, I take you here. They want more of the taking you here with me, spending time with me, talking with me. Our children crave our time.
A little 3-year-old girl used to have her father, when he was around, he would tell her bedtime stories. And she enjoyed these bedtime stories so much. So she complained because he was a traveling guy, a little pastor, you know, some of these pastors were always traveling, going here, there, and everywhere. So she complained and said, I miss these stories so much when you're not here. So he came upon a beautiful plan. He tape recorded a series of stories, a whole pile of stories, so that when he wasn't around, she could just turn on the tape recorder and listen to the story. So when he went on his next trip, several days, and came back home, he said, sweetheart, how did you like the stories? She said, Daddy, I liked the stories, but I couldn't sit on the tape recorder's lap. You see, being in his arms, in his lap, was an important part of that time-sharing experience. Not just hearing his voice on a tape recorder. And we need to learn to spend time with our children. You know what? One of the things we did when our children were small and home, we didn't always treat them as a bunch. We had 4, but we didn't always lump them together. So every now and then we would take one out by themselves so that we could just have some quality time with that one child and so forth. So you need to spend quality time and quantity time with each of your children. If you have several, spend some time with each of them, not just as the group of children, but even individually.
And one of the benefits of this time spent together with the children is that you help them to build memories. It's important to make a memory. Sometimes we have to take the effort and the time and exercise the creativity to make a memory. You know, we feel good sometimes when our children say, oh, you remember when we did so and so and so and so? You know, those memories are etched in their minds. So remember, spending time together not only makes them happy, but it helps them make a memory, build a memory.
You notice how blessed we Seventh-day Adventists are? That book, Adventist Home. Pick up that book, Adventist Home, and the book, Child Guidance. And they are loaded with good stuff. Here, Ellen White says again, the home should be to the children the most attractive place in the world. So when we create that atmosphere of love and caring, where the children feel, I'm happy to be home. They go to school, but they're anxious for school to be over so that they can be home with their parents and so on. They go away on a vacation, and they're anxious to come back home to be with mommy and daddy. Then you know that you are creating that bond that will help you to influence them in the way that they ought to go.
So here's a home assignment for you. What concrete plans can you make for more time with your children in the next 2 months, in the next 4 months, in the next 6 months? What concrete plans can you make for spending more time with your children in the next 2 months, 4 months, 6 months? That's an assignment for home.
You know, the researchers also found that no matter what denomination or what religious persuasion the people were in these families that they studied, that one of the things that made families strong was spiritual well-being. They had a good spiritual core, a good spiritual base for the family.
And this involves a relationship to Christ. Sometimes we think of having a relationship to Christ as something that's an adult responsibility. But we have found that children who are taught to develop a relationship with Christ hold on to that, are more likely to hold on to that relationship in adulthood.
And we are not selling, so I could mention it here. That's why one of the books that my wife wrote in recent times was How to... No, the other one.
How to help kids.
How to help kids enjoy church and build a relationship with Jesus. Because many parents are wondering, how could I get my child to really love Jesus and so on? And then there's another one.
This one is called
more recently.
Fun Time with Jesus. Came out this year, late last year. Fun Time with Jesus. It's a devotional book for kids between 6 and 8, you know, just when they have learned to read, to help them develop a personal devotional habit. So this is not the book that you read in family worship, but this book, the kid could go aside and have a little personal devotional time, just about 3 or 4 minutes every day. Fun Time with Jesus. Check it out on Amazon.com.
Because your children need to own God for themselves. You ever heard people say God has no grandchildren? We human beings can have grandchildren, but God has no grandchildren. Each child has to become a child of God for himself or herself. And our job as parents and those of us who work with the church is to teach children to have that personal, individual relationship with Jesus, with God, rather than a hand-me-down religion that they're borrowing from their parents.
We're talking about spiritual well-being in the family. And the next point is to study and live by God's word. So the children need to see us studying God's word too, and see us living by God's word.
And no other agency can do as good a job in spiritual formation in the children as the home. Not the Sabbath school, not the AY department, not the divine service. No other agency can do as good a job as that home. And you only have to look again at the Bible and see some examples. Moses' parents, Amram and Jochebed, had done such a marvelous job in 12 years that not all the trappings of power and the influence of the palace of Egypt could take that away from him. You know that beautiful passage in Hebrews 11? That when he was come to years, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. So it could not be erased. It had become a part of him because his parents at the mother's knee had done such an effective job. Same thing is true with the others. Let's mention Josiah. Josiah we could mention because he's an exceptional case where it wasn't so much the parents but the priests and others who took him aside and decided that in spite of the bad influence of your home, we want you to become a good guy.
That's a point in favor of mentoring. And this is another thing that we need to do. Sometimes we see a home and we figure the kid isn't getting spiritual benefits from the home. It's our chance to cut in there and mentor that kid.
We're talking about what makes families strong so that in turn they can produce the kind of children that we want to have. And another one is the ability to cope with stress and crises.
Very often when stress and crises come into the home tends to get fragmented and people get at each other's throats. You know, stress has a serious effect on our lifestyle, on our physical health as well, apart from our environment and our behavior. Holmes and Ray developed an instrument to determine the relationship between stress and susceptibility to illness. And it's amazing all the things, the stress points that one can get in relationship to illness. For example, sickness in the family could be about 53 stress points. Major injury to a person, accident, job loss, all of those things have stress points. And if you have added up and you have more than 150 points, then you have a 50-50 chance of getting sick. And if you have 300 or more stress points, then you have a 90% chance of getting really ill. And this is why Jesus invites us to lay our burdens on him, because that stress is too much for us to carry.
And let us mention that if you have not yet had a crisis in your family, just look around the corner. It's around there coming. It's around there coming. Because we live in this vale of tears, and a lot of humanity is to have stress and problems. We're going to have stress and problems, and so families, husbands and wives, parents and children have to learn how are we going to handle stress when the stress comes. an unplanned pregnancy, a catastrophic illness, a financial loss, and so on.
And sometimes you can have good things could give us stress, you know, like Christmas and a wedding in the family, a promotion. So it's not only the bad life events that cause us stress.
Let's give you a quick crash course then in how to handle stress. And we have had our own share of stress. The last 12 months was one of the most stressful in our lives. I had major back surgery. And I tell you, and since I've never had surgery in my life before, that was something that blew me out of the water.
And you know how it is when men are patients?
And then in the midst of that, my wife's mother died. And so she had to run away while I was still on my back from the surgery, I tell you. So crisis will come, one way or another, sooner or later. How do you cope then? Focus on the challenge and don't level your guns at each other.
Get all the facts. What are all the things surrounding this crisis? Lay the problem out before the Lord. You know, we have examples of in the Bible where crisis struck and the people prayed. Sometimes we grapple with the crisis all by ourselves, forgetting that there's a great, big, powerful, wonderful, able God to take care of our stress and take care of our crisis.
Then list all your resources. List all your resources. What do we have now that can help us to face this crisis that we have?
Yes, remember the story of Elisha and the widow. The widow, and she had no money, and you know she was facing quite an economic crunch. And Elisha said, "Tell me, what is it you have?" So let's look around and see what we have. Check on our resources.
Then use a crisis as a teaching opportunity for your children. Because they in turn, as they develop their own homes and families, are going to have crises too. And how you handle a crisis in your home is a teaching experience for your children.
Remember that the resources of heaven are available to you.
Didn't God promise somewhere that when you walk through the fire, He's going to be with you, and through the floods, He will not allow you to drown, and so on? So thank God in advance for the anticipated answer and the blessing that will come your way.
In strong marriages and homes, the parents model the virtues and values they want their children to possess. It's like, do what I say and do.
We wish we had time just to talk about the values that we need to transmit to our children.
But you have them in your handout, so when you have a chance, please look at them.
Because some of these seem to have been treated like antiquated relics from a prehistoric age, and you don't see too much of some of these values anymore in the homes. Respect for the elderly.
Respect for womanhood, the dignity of labor, morality, honesty, integrity, dependability, courage of convictions, you know, like Daniel, your purpose in your heart.
Fair play.
Love
Fair play.
for all
One
men.
of the seminars we do regularly is the one about bullying. You know, the bullying. Children don't know how to play with each other without bullying each other anymore. That's one in itself.
Love for all men, respect for God, reverence for the holy.
And then strong families dream big dreams.
It's okay
and
to
the
dream.
children catch the spirit.
One of the things I like so much about my grandmother is that she encouraged me to dream, and she would dream along with me. And it's not until I became an adult I realized that this was really something that helped me. It's okay to dream. Teach your children to dream. Oscar Hammerstein said, if you don't have a dream, how are you going to make a dream come true? So it's not being idle, and don't talk about building castles in the air. It's about dreaming with the child. Because God has dreams for us. In Jeremiah 29:11, God says that He has hopes and dreams for us, for our future. So dream along. I have a poem I'd like to share with you about dreaming your dreams. I think it's so beautiful. Let's read it together. Close your eyes, my little one. Close your eyes and dream. You can be anyone you dream. You can go anywhere, do anything, meet anyone. Just close your eyes and dream your dreams. Let your imagination take control. Take you on adventures never told. Just close your eyes, my little one. Close your eyes and dream. You can conquer every fear. There's no need to be frightened. You're not alone here in your dreams. Just open up your mind and let your dreams flow through. There's a great big world around us. Come on along and dream with me sweet dreams, my little one.
So God wants you to have success and happiness in your marriage and your parenting. And it is so good to know that we have him on our side. Doesn't the Bible say somewhere, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world? Parenting these days is not easy. It's not easy. But God in his wisdom designed this system. When God fashioned human beings, he could have had it in such a way that the children, when you wanted children, you go and look for the children tree and you pick the child off the tree. But God said, I'm going to design a beautiful system so that they can have children. I'm going to make it fun for them to have children, and then they will also have fun bringing up the children. So parenting was God's idea, and God has promised the resources of heaven to help us in our parenting. Thank you so much.